In 2022, a pair of former ball players and a talented young broadcaster were tasked with creating a college football podcast. These men promptly escaped into the mountains of West Virginia and got to work. If you want top-level football analysis, off-topic stories, and locker room humor, you're in the right place. You are In the Gun.
In the Gun, Episode 6, your new favorite WVU sports podcast, WVU football podcast. Wes Uhler with the best teammates in the business, the Signal Caller Jed Drenning, and the runaway beer truck himself, Owen Schmitt. Gentlemen, we still hurting from last Thursday night, or are we over it? Where are we at? How's our mentals?
I'm moving on, man. Getting over it.
The only thing that'll get that taste out of our mouth is our first W. Meanwhile, I had to go through my first road game of the year here. I'm on the road in Fredericksburg, Virginia, in a hotel room, so I don't get to enjoy the comforts of Drenning Stadium. So,
well, Owen is 6 for 6 and bringing us a different background here on everything.
He's a gypsy. He's going to do one from a boxcar before it's over. Yeah.
I tell you what, that looks a lot like the couch in the Titanic where Rose and Jack. Never mind. I've said too much. This episode of ITG brought to you by our friends at GoMart. We are, of course, going to have a full Kansas preview for you. We'll catch up with our buddy Sean Mariner again. We'll have some runaway questions. A lot of fun planned for you in this edition of ITG.
Game day got you on the go? We get it. GoMart is here to keep you going all season long with stores throughout our home state. We're a proud West Virginia-owned company, and our friendly staff is committed to serving our communities. From fuel to freshly brewed coffee and snacks, a stop at GoMart to cover your game day needs is always a touchdown. Plus, GoMart Rewards members earn points with each purchase to redeem for discounts on gas and free items. So stop by, start saving, and stay on the go with GoMart.
Episode 6. ITG here. If you've been rocking and rolling with us through the first 5 episodes, you know this is normally the part of the show where we take a look at some headlines around college football, around the Big 12. For me, the big one to get to today, or to make sure we mention, of course, today, we talked a lot in Episode 5 about C.J. Donaldson, freshman newcomer, running back who had a huge performance, reminiscent a little bit of Noel Devine, his freshman year, only a handful of carries, but well over 100 yards. Well, because of that performance this last Thursday night against those stinking Pitt Panthers, CJ has been named Big 12 Newcomer of the Week, so congratulations to him. Jed, I believe it was you who made this at some point in this reference at some point in the build-up to the Pitt game, but nobody from Pitt really game planned for C.J. Donaldson because they didn't know what to expect. He hadn't played a collegiate game yet. That certainly will not be the case for Kansas this weekend. And C.J., again, big congratulations to him for getting named Big 12 Newcomer of the Week. Speaking of C.J., he was a part of our latest poll on our Twitter account, @InTheGunPodcast. That's where you can get involved with our weekly Twitter polls. This one brought to you by our friends at Toothman Ford, because we all know cars cost less in Grafton. The question that we asked this week was, with one game now on tape, which feature of this Mountaineer team are you most excited about? Winning the poll here with 64% of the vote, JT Daniels' accuracy and toughness. But in second place, C.J. Donaldson and the run game. Third place, Dante and the pass rush. C.J. in the run game getting about 27% of the vote there. Clearly the second place option. So, yeah, I get that. I mean, we knew the offense was going to be revamped this year, right? You bring in Graham Harrell. You've got a new starting quarterback. That makes sense to me that, able to put up 31 points in week 1. Let's build from there and continue to get better.
I texted Travis Trickett, after he's at South Florida as the OC now. And I texted him about the BYU game they lost, but I was also thanking him for his parting gift and getting us CJ Donaldson, because again, Travis and I had many conversations throughout the course of recruiting CJ, and he was telling me just how different this kid really is. Everybody was curious as to where he might fit in. The only thing we were certain of is that he would fit in. He's a man of many talents, and that was really apparent and on the stage for the world to see Thursday night in Pittsburgh. And we're excited and looking forward to seeing more out of him. Neil said that obviously he'll continue to have an expanded role. So there's a host of things you can do with that kid. He blocked a punt. I mean, there's transition units. You don't want to take him off the field for that stuff. He's just too talented at everything he does.
Yeah, he's an absolute playmaker. Great runner. I mean, it was honestly a pleasure watching him run downhill, breaking arm tackles. Hopefully this week they're going to dial his number up a little bit more in the run game. We'll see. I obviously don't know what their mindset is, but I would assume from the performance from Thursday night they definitely will. And it's nice to see a player like that who is a tweener. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Quote unquote tweener. Make plays not only just in the offense, but on the special teams coming up big for us. So looking for good things from him this year, obviously, and looking forward to seeing him run.
A lot of fun comps to make with him. One that jumps to mind, I don't mean from a stature or production standpoint, but just stylistically, kind of reminds me of Samaje Perine, the old barreling bull that Oklahoma had a handful of years ago. He's very nimble, very physical. Owen, you and I have both been impressed by how decisive he is. I mean, when he busted that 44-yard run, first it was beautifully blocked. We caught Pitt in a stunt and folded that whole thing down, but that wouldn't have worked, irrespective of how big the hole might be, if CJ wasn't decisive enough to see that, recognize that, plant with one cut and go, and then run through those arm tackles like you talked about.
Yeah, put the hurting on the units, and hey, you're not going to be able to stop a guy that's that big. I mean, arm tackles. We had some issues with the first two cats, right? And you just see that there's just a determination, and there's a difference in a guy who runs the ball like that. You know what I mean? It's just an attitude. It's and it's a way to get it done. That's more my style. I'm a north-south runner for obvious reasons. You know what I mean? I'm not the most athletic. I'm not the fastest guy. I'm bigger, and my weight carries through those arm tackles. But he's somebody who's really. I'm expecting. I'm getting nuts here a little bit. I'm like, I can expect like really big things from him. He's a thick kid, but he's lean. He's got big legs. A freshman, I mean, who knows what's going to happen after a year or two in the weight program? He could be an absolute monster. A Hoss, you know what I'm talking about? He's going to be one of those guys, you know what I'm saying? And
Wes, as I toss back to you, Wes, I was going to say, I think it's pretty cool that Tony Mathis gets to kind of dwell in the shadows. I mean, he had 70-plus yards, played a pretty solid football game, got stronger as the game went on. He recovered that big fumble down by the goal line to bail us out. Matter of fact, I think he recovered a couple, but was a productive kid, not just running the football. But I like the fact that he gets to hide a little bit, and that's a nice little counterpunch, So
yep.
I think we're on to something here.
Certainly are. From one Hoss and CJ Donaldson to another Hoss and Owen Schmitt, this will transition nicely into our into where we want to go next here. It'll be a fan favorite segment here on ITG, and it's called Runaway Questions.
Owen Schmitt, like a runaway beer truck down the sidelines. Big Owen Schmitt, touchdown, West Virginia.
Real simple concept, right? Runaway questions. It's where you ask your questions for the runaway beer truck himself, Owen Schmitt. We'll take these questions also on our Twitter account, @InTheGunPodcast. That's where you can get involved with all of our social media channels, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Subscribe on YouTube if you want to see the video element of this show as well. Owen, you ready for some questions from the listeners?
Dude, I am ready, and I appreciate all the engagement, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned that because there were so many questions. I couldn't grab them all because we'd be sitting here for 2 hours answering all the questions. That's great. We appreciate it. No hard feelings. Please don't take it personal if your question didn't get picked. Just keep tweeting, and you'll get in one of these episodes. And there's a couple cases where a few people ask the same question, and we just maybe pick the one who said it in the most concise, clear, and direct way. So if your question doesn't get answered, no hard feelings. Just keep tweeting, and we'll definitely get you in there at some point before the season ends. But I mean, Owen Schmitt, popular guy. Who would have imagined? I tell you what, Owen. This is a good one from Brian here to get us started. He said, what would you suggest? What would your message be to the players coming back from such an emotional defeat? How do you keep one loss from turning into two?
Well, that's tough, right? That's an old vet move, right? You got to keep on keeping on, and really, you got to let it go. You just got to let it go. You got to watch the film. You got to make the adjustments. You got to come out this week. You got to practice hard. What I love about football is short-term memory loss. Okay, you make a bad play, you forget about it. If you dwell on it, it becomes an immense problem that you start to just roll out of control. It's like a giant snowball effect. So have some short-term memory loss. Get you a couple Jaeger bombs in you, right? Forget that stuff, and just come out this week, focus up, get the job done. That's all you can do. That's really what has to take place. You got to forget about it. You can read the headlines, all the stuff you want in the world. It's not going to help. Just forget about it, and go out there and prepare for this week. And if you do that correctly, the right way, we should have a great game versus Kansas.
Yeah, the only way to get a bad taste out of your mouth, right, is to get a good one and go out there and take care of business on Saturday.
Yep.
John tweets here and wants to know, who were you most impressed by with their Week 1 performance?
I've kind of been up on CJ. That's
I was gonna say, I think you might have answered that one already.
It's hard not to get hyped up about us having a big back. I think about KJ Harris when we had him, and that was right before I came in. I loved watching KJ run, man. I mean, he was a freak of nature, big-bodied guy. Enjoyed watching him. I grew up watching so many big backs. I think like Eddie George, Mike Allstott, guys like that. I love when a big old boy gets to tote the rock. Obviously, Eddie and Mike were two totally kind of different guys, but both big backs. I think that Derrick Henry. I saw a video of him on Twitter the other day. He is an enormous man.
Massive.
He is so big. I can only imagine the thump he puts on. I'm sure it's a good one. But honestly, getting back to the question, CJ was, in my opinion, just so impressive. As a freshman, coming in, getting it done, hitting it north and south, looking like a true running back, in my opinion. Look, those kinds of skills. Understands the game of football. Hey, man, north and south, right? So that would be my answer this week, or for the game on Thursday, would definitely be CJ.
Derrick Henry, Wes. The only thing I'd add, when we saw him in Atlanta, as he was out there in pregame, the first thing I thought of was that old, you know how the raccoons stack on top of each other and put the trench coat on? That crossed my mind. He's a big man.
He's enormous.
He's thick. He's thick, as the kids would say. Robert tweets here for Owen and says, was it just me or was JT, was that a masterpiece to watch, directing the run game, delivering perfect passes? It was a masterpiece to watch. Yeah, I mean, I think we're all excited about that, certainly. JT, only one game in the books, but he was spinning it.
I mean, he was an artist out there with the brush, man, just painting his picture. Against a high-quality, high-level football team. This isn't a tune-up game, right? This isn't against Tennessee Tech University, okay? This is against the number 16th ranked team in the country. You know what I mean? And hats off to them. They're a great team. I'm not saying it. We've all voiced our opinions, about the recap. But that is what it is.
And he checked into a couple of those runs. I mean, he sees the big picture, right?
Yeah.
He understands the offense, how the concepts link. He understands how to put you in the most favorable situation and the best play. And he understands the numbers game. And a couple of times we were ready to throw the ball. And he actually checked into a couple of those run plays we had success on. So,
And getting Jed just a little bit more on that, because I get excited sometimes and I lose my mind. But I was so impressed, and we talked about this, about the positions of the balls that he threw, keeping the receivers out of harm's way, being able to throw the ball where if the ball wasn't caught, nobody was catching it, being able to throw the ball in a position where the receiver was going to be able to make a play or nobody else was. And that is just something that comes from a high level guy, who understands the game, understands the long season, and understands the safety of his boys out there.
arm talent, ball placement. There were a couple times in watching that tape, Wes. I'll throw it back to you here. He actually threw the football behind the receiver to protect them from the safety they were running into. So he turned them around at the throw so that he got their back to the defender who was going to hit him. And again, that's the mark of pinpoint accuracy, a guy who sees the big picture and wants to protect these guys.
Yeah, you don't always just have to throw your guys open, right? Sometimes you can throw them to safety, and that's good to hear. Certainly, so those are the specific ones from week one that I pulled out for you, Owen. Now just a couple fun ones here as we wrap this up. Dan wants to know loudest home game you ever played, loudest away game you ever played.
Ooh, loudest home game. I want to probably say, unfortunately, it was probably that Pitt game at the beginning of the game. I mean, that atmosphere was absolutely rocking. Um, that to me, I mean, I'll tell you this much: I've been back to Mountaineer Field for a few games on the field, and the decibel level that I feel like we played with, and I might be biased on this, obviously, just because it was when I was playing, but it used to get so like deafening in the stadium. And I haven't been there for a game quite yet. But like I said, it's different down on the field. I mean, when you're down on the field and it's deafening, it's quite an experience. And I'd say loudest away game, man.
How was the Georgia Dome early
I was
on?
gonna say probably Sugar Bowl, man. That was absolutely insane. It was basically like a giant red Pac-Man, all around the stadium.
Yeah.
We were the little mouth there, the little yellow slice of pie. But that place was absolutely rocking. And traditionally, I mean, a dome is going to hold all that noise in. When I played in Seattle, the way their stadium's kind of designed, I felt like that holds a lot of noise in. But there's nothing like a dome, man. And when it's packed like it was with, probably 80%,
80,000 people.
you know, you know what I'm saying? Like, and probably 80% of that was Georgia fans. You know what I mean? I know we still traveled well, but like it might have been 75, but like literally, it was absolutely nuts. And it literally got shut off once we ran that fake punt.
Well,
I'll share one more story, which was awesome. When we did win that game, we went back to the hotel, and as we were walking through the hotel, there was like, dude, it was nuts. Everybody was like on cloud nine, fans, players, coaches, everybody, the whole family, right? And they started singing Country Roads, man, and it was like and we were in like the lobby of the hotel, and it went straight up. It was like wide open, and like it was the coolest experience ever. Just all those people singing, and just echoed through the entire place. It was a really special experience.
I love it. I love it. Well, speaking of Sugar Bowl versus Georgia, Dave wants to know more satisfying win. Was it the Sugar Bowl against Georgia, or was it the Fiesta Bowl against Oklahoma?
Oh, what? See, that's a tough one too. That both equally enjoyable. I'd say for me personally, I'm going to say the Fiesta Bowl just because finally didn't get caught from behind, scored me one of them tutties, son. And it was the last game I ever played as a Mountaineer. It was one I'll just never forget. It was an emotional game. Obviously, our head coach kind of just, kind of bailed a little bit. I don't, necessarily blame him for that, but and just what had happened throughout. We lose the pit, we lose the national championship opportunity. We at least get to play a worthy opponent. The entire freaking universe thinks we're going to get our aces handed to us, and we go out there and we absolutely just punch them right in the mouth. It was a glorious feeling.
No doubt. No doubt. I love hearing that. It was glorious for me, Owen, too. I was 16 years old, I think, 17 years old. It was glorious all around, without a doubt. So that's Runaway Questions. We'll do that not every single episode, but regularly here on ITG. Make sure you're getting involved with us on Twitter again, at In the Gun Podcast, if you want to get your question in for the Runaway Beer Truck himself, Mr. Owen Schmitt. Now, as we get resituated here, as we go to close out our first segment, we've got our good friend of the show. You saw him a couple weeks ago as he's waving and tapping in now. It's our buddy, our WVU video insider, Sean Mariner. What's up, Big Daddy?
How are you guys? How are things?
We're living the dream.
Doug.
Oh, hey.
Are you listen? You're like Owen too now. A different background every week. What are we doing here?
You guys are gonna crush me for my lighting last week, so I'm gonna move upstairs into the back room. You don't like our wondrous vista back here?
Big Daddy, Wes decided that Jack is getting ready to sketch Owen on the couch there.
Yes, 100%. I need your right leg a little higher.
That's right. Yeah.
If I could
Hit
get
me like one of your French girls.
I'd love to get the whole couch in the view. It's pretty. It's something else.
My God.
Sean, let's jump right into it. We were just talking about atmospheres. Owen was talking a little bit about Georgia and the Sugar Bowl and what it was like to win that game with primarily Georgia fans down there.
Yes.
Atmosphere on Thursday down on the field. What was it like?
Unreal. Owen, when we won the Sugar Bowl, your fat buddy was there as a student. And I can remember I got my flip phone out, and as we were leaving the Georgia Dome going down those big curly ramps, I recorded for a minute straight on my cell phone the Let's Go Mountaineer cheer that was going on. And it was electric.
We just shared a moment there. I was talking about when we got back to the hotel and how crazy that was. I mean, it was literally I obviously the tradition of the program was learning it as I was there.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I mean, that was the biggest thing that had ever happened to me. And I know our team for a while. So it was literally like people were like sobbing. And I mean, it was like a very special moment, man. I mean, it was intense.
I had French class with Phil Brady, and I thought, I'm going to call Phil after the game and congratulate him. It rang once, went straight to voicemail, and let me know that voicemail box was full. And I somehow was surprised. Like, oh, yeah, of course it's full. Why wouldn't it be? But no, Wes, Thursday, unreal. Absolutely unreal. I mean, I know you guys are probably going over the stats, biggest sporting event in the history of Pittsburgh, not just Pitt football, Steelers, anything like that. When we scored that first touchdown, that place exploded, and you could feel it down on the sidelines. And we have a new Learfield Plus guy, one of the digital side, and he came over and he was asking for fan shots, and it was like middle of the third. I said, listen, if we're still close at the end of the third quarter, you're going to want to have your camera on and just go over and find some of our fans. And the song happened. It sounded incredible from a WVU fan perspective. Like all I heard was ESP raining down from the sidelines. And he's from Minnesota. He has no ties to West Virginia. He doesn't know much. He came back over, and his eyes, he just goes, oh, wow. Yeah, that was something. Like,
Thank you.
I tried to warn you.
You know what's funny? Garrett was getting loose. All right.
Yeah.
In the timeout, and he was pumping in perfect unison to the ESP. It was great. So, hey, can you corroborate my story? I threw the ball man under the bus, the Pitt ball man.
Yeah.
Did you notice this guy on the sidelines?
Lurking
Yes. Well,
hard.
he's probably 50. but Snow White hair looks 70, but
Yeah.
he's like jumping up and down and celebrating in front of our coaches and our players, and he got whacked in the third quarter.
Yeah.
And it was delightful.
We call that karmic justice, I believe.
You.
Head on a swivel on the sidelines.
I didn't know if you saw him or not, but by the way, I took a nice shot of you. I was watching the Watchers, okay, in pregame. It's a picture of you taking a picture of Neil and Narduzzi.
Yep.
I texted you that today.
Yes.
And Narduzzi, as you can see, if you're watching online, we're putting the picture up, but let me explain it to you. He has his fingers in his ears. So not even Pat Narduzzi can stand to hear Pat Narduzzi as he's talking to Neil. But
another wonder of that picture is my posture. Had no idea my back looked that bad and that my belly can get that low to the ground when I think I'm just like leaning over to get some video. So that's great. That was wonderful to see.
It's my magic with the camera. I bring that out in you. Yeah.
Woof.
You looked majestic, pal. All right. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
31,000 steps between Thursday and Friday morning before I left. It took me until Monday morning to like recover my body. Because I'm old, I'm fat, and I can't do that anymore. I tried running on the field with the team. What was that, Owen?
You got to be kidding me, right?
No. I got there at noon and just was walking around. I walked out to tailgates. I'm 37. I did not stretch, and I thought, hell yeah, I'll run out on the field with the team. Yeah, let's go full sprint from our tunnel across. This is great. And then the moment the adrenaline wore off in the first quarter, I was like, I'm dead. I'm going to die here.
So we're in the locker room. Pre-game. This is right before the kids come out, right before the run on, and we're showing the hype video. Okay, now I'm behind the screen. I can't see it. I can just hear it. Okay, so like Neil's off to one side, I'm off to the other. I'm behind it, and the kids are all in front of me watching it. They put it on the big screen, right? Well, Big Daddy is like front and center in the middle of the kids. All right, so the thing starts to wind down. The hype video does. At which point, he starts grabbing his camera like Marshall Dillon going for his holster. And he knows the exact time that thing's going to end because he wants to capture the moment. And it was perfect. He was up there, snap. Yep. It's great.
Yep.
I love it. All right, so here's the last one I got for you, Sean. I need to know all about that kerfuffle at the end of the game. So quick backstory, right? I was at the game Thursday. Game ends. It was probably about midnight when I got home, midnight-ish, right? Give or take a few minutes. I sat in my garage in the dark and silence, depressed for an hour before I even went inside. True story, swear to God. Yep. I crawl into bed at like 1 o'clock, and my wife rolls over. She woke up. She heard me coming in. My wife rolls over, and she goes, "Did you see Sean in all those videos?" And I was like, wait, what? What videos? What are you talking about? She was like, and again, she's half asleep. Like, she's been asleep for probably 2-3 hours at this point. She goes, oh, yeah, like, there was some big fight after the game in the tunnel, and I saw Sean in there pushing people around. You saw Sean doing what? In a fight? Where? And so, like, I'm ready to pass out at 1 a.m, like, depressed, tired, exhausted. And so I'm scrolling through Twitter, and I see what she meant. Everyone's seen the video now, right? Yeah. WVU's trying to get off the field. They're getting some grief from the Pitt student section. The Pitt players are taunting and blowing kisses. And our boy, Sean Mariner, was right in the middle of all that, playing peacekeeper, trying to move some bodies. What was that? One, good job keeping your head there. And two,
trying to help.
What was that chaos like?
So I wasn't shoving anybody. Let's Morgan, thank you. But also there was no physicality. Obviously I'm crushed. Like, I'm almost crying to our video coordinator on the sideline when the game ended. Like, I'm crushed. Walking off the field, and I can see the student section's here. The Pitt sideline is right there. And the only place we can go is in that tunnel. That's the only way we can get to our locker room. And there's nobody there. There's no security. There's no nothing. Now, I will give credit to Pitt. They want to celebrate with their students, right? Our team would want to do the same. So they're just trying to get to the students as we're trying to get off. I get to the tunnel. I realize, like, this is, where things are going to come to a head. So I just turn around, and I can see some of our players like starting to turn around and chirp. And I went dad mode, and I just walked out there like, let's take care of our guys. I'm here to help the guys. And as I get out there and I'm just, gently guiding people up like, hey, come on, we're good. All of a sudden, Pitt's behind me. And at one point, you can see in one of the videos, I'm just like, I'm taking my time trying to get people off because I don't want to rush around and freak out and any of that. Like, let's just say we're good. We're okay. All of a sudden, I'm in Pitt's huddle. and I have to like swim move a guy, like, hey, get out of my way. And the guy's like, yeah, sure, come on, just lets me through. And then it's me just trying to escort a few guys. It was me. Connor McNamara was jumping around in there too, one of our equipment guys. One of our other video guys, Jeff Guckert, he's a big former lacrosse guy. He's walking behind me too. I could not hear one word about what was being said, what was any of that stuff. I was just, let's get our boys and get out of here safe, everybody. Like, that's all it was. It was mother hen mode. Oh, woof. Well, a guy, when I was dropping off my son at daycare this morning, a guy actually, hey, did I see you on TV? Like, yep. Hey, how are you? That was just here to help.
You were very much like for those who haven't seen it, it was like when Tiger Woods wins the Masters or something, and there's like the people behind him that are like just keeping a barrier for, all right, come on, Tiger, we got to go up to the clubhouse and sign your scorecard. That was
only time in my life I'll get to feel like a get back guy on the sideline. You know what I mean? That was it. That was all it was.
Need to get back guy. So quickly, Sean.
Yes.
Again, without spilling the secret sauce, I realize how classified these things can be. The hype video obviously plays a critical role for the kids. So coming out of such an emotionally charged loss into the home opener under the lights, first time Neil's coached under the lights. Okay. What's that tell you? What type of content might they look to populate such a video with under these circumstances? What might be the spirit of that?
So I'm not sure exactly what they're going to go with, but honestly, being over there, the vibe and the morale is actually pretty good. You know, obviously you guys have recapped it already, feeling how you feeling right after a loss, all of that stuff. But if you take the 10,000 mile view, right? Team showed some fight. You got there are a lot of positives to build on, even though it obviously didn't go your way. So I very much think that it's going to be tilting in that direction this week. They were talking about today one of the motivation videos, the uniform video that's coming out, updating the intro video. Like, there's some good stuff coming down the hopper. I'm nervous because it is a night game, and your fat buddy's out of practice with night game stuff. So I got to make sure that the music and my timing and everything is good with that upstairs. So I got to get over into the lab for a little while.
Now, would you agree with me in the locker room after the game? Yes, of course, there was hurt. Okay. Yes. And there was the gamut of emotions, but I thought the overwhelming emotion, if I had to come up with one word, was a quiet rage. I mean, there just seemed to be a quiet rage in that locker room. We understand what had happened. We were ticked off that it had happened. I think we all recognized the potential, but people were mad.
Yeah.
Again, I don't mean screaming mad. It was a quiet rage. You know
this feeling, Owen, the 1,000-yard stare, right? You're just sitting in your locker. You don't hear anything. You don't see anything. There's a point on the floor that you were burning a hole into, and that's it. You're not even, your face isn't even filled with anger. It's just that. And that's what it was. It was a lot of knee shaking and 1,000-yard stares, just thinking and thinking and thinking. But, and you hate to say, it's weird to say, but almost in a positive way, because you don't want to feel that way ever again, right?
Too much time invested, man. You know what I mean? I think that's what people don't understand too. Like, this is the first game of the season, but all those workouts in the summertime, all the training camp stuff, hitting your brothers for 2-3 weeks, and now this is your first chance to play Pitt in 11 years. There's a lot of history there. You're wanting to set the tone for the season. You're playing a top-ranked team. This is, there's a ton of pressure. It's like there's just so much stuff going on, and then it's that wah wah wah, and it's there's so much going on in your head. You're questioning yourself. You're questioning what's going on. You're not necessarily mad at anybody, but you're just like, what could I have done to do better? Where did I mess up tonight? What do I need to do to improve? It's a moment where you look yourself in the mirror. You know what I mean? That's what you're doing. You know what I mean?
What's incredible too, like JT post game came in and that room was just electric, because all he was doing was talking about how much he supports these guys. Like, calm, even, wasn't shaking. Whatever, game's over, we move on. Did the same thing at media this week. Came into the room, had control of the room. Like that's big. I hate to be that guy that always says, oh, there's positives with all that stuff. But the way he speaks, the intelligence and the knowledge with which he speaks and the confidence, you can't help but feel like, yeah, we're 100% going to be all right. That guy's our quarterback. That guy's leading everything. If he's saying it, that means everybody else is feeling it. You gotta take some positivity from that.
Yeah, we've talked so much this week on just his poise and composure throughout everything that's happened. And I mean, you can't not get hyped. I mean, you can't not get hyped. I mean, it's like it's been so long, you know what I mean? And now that you're getting a guy like this, I mean, he checks all the boxes and you're just waiting for I mean, I'm just waiting for Saturday to see what's going to happen again. Because I know it's going to be a positive deal. I don't care what anybody says. We lost that game. We did not get beat. Okay. That's my personal opinion. If you want to fight me, bring it down, brother. I'm in Greenbrier County. I live at Dawson exit. It's exit 150.
Hold on, let me write this down. Say that again. Can you repeat that, please?
He's never there. He's never there when we're taping.
I don't think anybody wants to fight somebody that's got a couch like that. That's all I'm going to say.
Good point. Hey, Big Daddy, here in a bit, when you're gone, we're going to be reflecting on last year's trip to Kansas. Anything put you on the spot here? Anything stand out about our journey to Kansas, surviving that one last year?
No, I do remember sideline near the end when they started to make that run. Things got a little tense, and then Tony Mathis comes out and does Tony Mathis things, and all felt right in the world again. But no, other than that, no, not really. Because, and it's nothing against Kansas, not really that much of an atmosphere. There were more students there last year than I remember in years previous that were getting after a little bit. So that was good to see. Yep. But no, nothing in particular from that. I will say I was cutting footage today of Kansas, and they looked fast against Tennessee Tech. They looked fast, man.
Dude, better run fast on Saturday night. Better run fast on Saturday night. Yeah, no, everything you've laid out, Sean, it's giving me some 2017, losing on the last play of the game at FedEx Field to Virginia Tech vibes. Yeah. Where you felt like you let that one get away, but you looked around and you said, you know what? We got ourselves a quarterback. I think we're moving in the right direction. And then you won 7 of your next 9 games. Let's hope that maybe is a blueprint for this year as well, too. Ladies and gentlemen, Sean Mariner.
Thank you. Always a pleasure, gents.
Golf clap.
See you, buddy. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Big Daddy.
Adios.
Later, brother.
Sean Mariner, our WVU video insider. Great stuff from him, as always. We're going to get to this break. When we come back, we'll do a little what Vegas thinks we think, as we project some of these games around the Big 12 and the rest of the country. You are in the gun.
I'm talking with J.R. Toothman of Toothman Ford. J.R., everybody knows a lot of pro athletes buy from you. What's the secret?
Just like Will Greer, future Hall of Famer Frank Gore, James Washington, and many more pros, these guys have financial advisors that are always looking out for them to save time and money, and that's why they always shop at Toothman Ford.
And what if you're like us regular folks that don't have people giving us advice?
You don't need a financial advisor. Toothman Ford will save you time and money no matter who you are. Plus, we'll buy your car even if you don't buy from us. Visit ToothmanFord.com and get a quick, instant cash offer.
That sounds like a score to me.
That's right. And as always, we'll take anything in trade from chicken wings to Super Bowl rings.
Toothman Ford's got a lot of fans. Here's another one, Dallas Cowboys QB Will Greer.
This is Will Greer, former West Virginia and current NFL quarterback. And cars really do cost less in Grafton at Toothman Ford.
That's a fact, Will. Thanks. You can shop online anytime at ToothmanFord.com.
Back in the gun, ITG Episode 6. Wes Uhler, Owen Schmitt, Jed Drenning here, getting you ready for Kansas at the weekend. Before we talk specifically about the Jayhawks, we'll look around the rest of college football and the Big 12 here. A little segment that Jed has brilliantly titled, What Vegas Thinks We Think. We think, where we preview and project some of the other marquee matchups around the country, around the conference. Viva, Viva Las Vegas! It is time to look at the top 25 here. And, not surprising here, gentlemen. I feel like this is how it usually works in college football. You get a lot of big week 1 games. And then week 2, sometimes it's maybe not quite the entire palette. But still some intriguing ones, certainly. Still a couple of top 25 matchups. Tennessee gets their crack at Pitt now at Acrisure Stadium. 3:30 game on Saturday in the Johnny Majors Classic there, Jed. Of course, Johnny Majors, former head coach of both of those programs. Tennessee at Pitt Saturday afternoon. Tennessee ranked 24th as of today as we record this, so that is a top 25 game. You've also got a little SEC matchup with two top 20 teams. Second straight week, there's a big matchup in the Swamp as well, too. Not only Acrisure Stadium getting all the fun as Florida hosts Kentucky, and one of the more underrated, I think, SEC rivalries there in that one. Certainly the last few years as Kentucky's had a resurgence of their football program. Those are your two top 25 games outside of the Big 12. Certainly intriguing ones there to watch on Saturday, maybe before the Mountaineers take on Kansas, and then during hopefully the second half where the Mountaineers are comfortably in cruise control, and you can flip every once in a while and check out that Florida and Kentucky score as well, too. Another full slate of Big 12 games. If you look here now on your screen, we've got some projections coming your way, and obviously, Jed,
Let's
biggest
start with the AP. Start with the top 25, yeah.
You want to start with the top 25 first? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
So let's do that. Yeah, let's bring up the projections. Tennessee at Pitt, Kentucky at Florida. What are you seeing here, Jed?
Well, interesting matchup. Pitt and Tennessee battled in Knoxville last year, obviously. Nasty front seven that Pitt has against Herndon Hooker and that Tennessee offense. We have Vegas pegging Tennessee as a 7-point favorite, over under mid-60s. So I project it to be, based on those numbers, a 35-28-ish Tennessee win. And on to the other one, Kentucky, Florida. Will Florida suffer the hangover, in the Swamp after the big win over Utah last week? We'll see. Florida's favored. Vegas has over-under here in the low 50s. I put this one in the ballpark of a 28-24-ish Florida win. So we'll keep an eye on it. Last week we were close with a couple, not so close with a couple others, but just projections.
Just projections. But I tell you what, you were pretty darn close on some of these. Owen and I were thinking Jed might be working for Vegas behind the scenes. We'll see how close he gets here in week 2. Taking a look at some of these Big 12 matchups now. Some intriguing ones, certainly. You've got Iowa State and Iowa there, an in-state showdown that's always interesting. Houston, Texas Tech there. Missouri versus Kansas State. Feels like the big one, though, Jed, that everybody's going to have an eye on. Alabama at Texas at noon. We'll go with those 4 here to start and pull up some graphics here. How you feeling about these 4 Big 12 games on Saturday?
I'll tell you what, Quinn Ewers might still be wishing that he was the backup at Ohio State, come some point in the second half, if he makes it to the second half against Alabama. But no, I mean, I think Alabama is built to step in there and take care of business. I just think Texas is going to have some issues with this. Texas is going to have some problems, and Alabama is on both sides of the football. Their physicality, I think, is going to be imposing against Texas. That's going to be a fun environment. I remember when we went to DKR for the first time in 2012, for the first time forever in 2012. It was the largest crowd in the history of DKR Stadium, over 100,000 plus. That place can be electric and fun when that happens, but I don't think that Alabama is going to flinch at that. So,
Owen, Iowa State at Iowa feels like one of those. That's one of those, just from a neutral college football fan perspective. That always seems like it'd be a fun game to go watch and drink a beer with some of the corn-fed Iowans out there.
Oh man, there's definitely some bratwursts that are being boiled there in beer. Little crowd, you know what I mean? Some brats, beer. But hey, Big Ten football, you know what I'm saying? It's going to be smash mouth. Iowa State, we'll see what they get going on here. Hey,
Yeah,
Jen, am I looking at this right?
It's inverted. I'm gonna fix it by the time the graphic goes up. You're right. That's good.
Look for some smash mouth football there. We'll see what Iowa State's all about this year. They're going to be facing a Big Ten opponent. Like I said, you're looking at downhill runners, big O-line, D-line, and some physical football. I grew up watching Big Ten football, and that's what I always loved about it, smash mouth.
They were hard to watch last week.
Cool.
Yeah, somebody said, well, hey, why you ripping them?
Safeties to get the 7 points.
Yeah, they got 7 in just 4 innings, right? But anyway.
Taking a look here
at their little brother, by the way, Iowa State.
Oh yeah, big time. But
Usually.
you got to flip that script
Usually.
somehow, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Taking a look at the rest of the Big 12 here quickly. Kent State is at Oklahoma at 7 o'clock. Arizona State at Oklahoma State. That's an intriguing one. Tarleton at TCU. The mighty Tarleton. Of course, everybody knows that program. That's Saturday night as well, too. And then late night, another top 25 showdown. Baylor at BYU, 10:15 in the evening on Saturday night for your nightcap for after WVU takes care of business against Kansas. We'll pull up some projections now. What did your trusty, dusty Vegas machine over there tell you, Jed?
What crossed my mind when I saw that Baylor BYU game kick?
Hey, I can't wait to see that game, by the way.
Well, that's my future, 10-15 kickoffs in Provo, Utah. We're going to be getting on a plane after some of those games here in the near future. But all right, let's do this. We have two graphics to put up. First, let's start with the graphic that would include Alabama and Texas. And when you look at the spread, Alabama is a heavy favorite, -20, over under low 60s. I have a 41-21-ish Alabama win. Houston, Texas Tech. I have Texas Tech winning a shootout, 34-31-ish. Again, based on the point spread and the over-under. Missouri, Kansas State. Kansas State's an 8-point favorite. With the over-under, I'm looking at a K-State win in the ballpark of 31-23. Iowa, 23-20 over Iowa State based on the numbers. That's just the projection. Now let's move on to the second graphic, which would include Kent State and Oklahoma. Oklahoma, obviously a prohibitive favorite there. They're giving 32. We're looking at a 51-17 type game, 51-17-ish. Oklahoma State, Arizona State. We're looking at we project a 33-21-ish Oklahoma State win. And then we finished with the Baylor BYU game again because TCU Tarleton did not have a point spread, so we didn't do it. No projection. Baylor surviving 27-24 in that type of game based on the point spread, based on the over-under.
So there's some projections for you. Now, fellas, it's time to get to the predictions where we were a combined 0 for 3. We struck out last week here. Let's see if we can get right for week 2. Jed, I'll stick with you here first on this one. Every week, Jed will bring you his Big 12 signal caller of the week. He'll predict which quarterback in the conference has the most passing yards. Who you got this week, signal caller?
I tell you what, Tyler Shuck got hurt at Texas Tech, and Donovan Smith stepped in and played pretty well down the stretch for them in last week's opener. This week, they got Houston. So I actually believe I'm going to go with, as crazy as this might sound, a backup quarterback making a start this week against Doug Belk's Houston defense. I mean, Texas San Antonio, they made some hay in the pass game last week against the Cougars. So I like what Joey McGuire and Zach Kitley are doing offensively with Texas Tech. Donovan Smith's a solid football player. He's not a bad plan B at all. So I'm going to take a long shot, swing for the fences. I'm not going to go with the low-hanging fruit. I'm not even sure what that would be right now, to be honest with you. But I'm going to go with Donovan Smith to throw for the most yards in the Big 12 this week against Houston for Texas Tech.
Through the air, now to the ground for your Big 12 runaway beer truck of the week. That's where Owen will tell us who's going to lead the conference with the most rushing yards in week 2. Who you got, Big O?
Yeah, Oklahoma's playing Kent State obviously this week. They gave up quite a big number of yardage through the air against Washington last week, 393 passing yards. 132 of those were on the ground. I'm going with Eric Gray, number 0, 5'10", 211, 16 for 102 yesterday, last weekend. 6.4 yards average. He had the majority of the carries. Oklahoma in that game was 23 pass attempts, 38 runs, so they're a little run heavy. Looking to see against kind of a bent up Kent State team. I think he's got it this week.
And last but not least, that must mean it's my turn to give you the Big 12 defense of the week. That's where I predict which defense will give up the fewest points. Yeah, I'll go low-hanging fruit. Give me TCU at home against mighty Tarleton. All right, listen, you can yell at me all you want. They're the only team in the conference that isn't playing a fellow FBS team. Last week, I stayed away from the low-hanging fruit. I got burned. This week, I'm going for it. TCU. Tarleton will get 2 points. How about that? Fluke safety. Maybe 1 point.
I don't blame you.
Maybe
If
we'll
I was
know
you,
the
I'd-
game with
I'd make the
Jed and the
same
1
pick.
point safety.
Hey, I mean, a gimme's a gimme, Wes.
No doubt, no doubt. You know, you got to take the gimmies sometimes where you can get them, and especially after I swung and missed last week, I'll hopefully get back. We all will on the right track this week. It will be Kansas and WVU 6 o'clock Saturday night at Milan Puskar Stadium. When we come back here, we'll start to get into it. We will preview Kansas. We'll talk about who's got the advantage in the air, on the ground, special teams, all those things as we break down the Mountaineers and the Jayhawks. Wes Uhler, Jed Drenning, Owen Schmitt, you are in the gun.
Game day got you on the go? We get it. GoMart is here to keep you going all season long with stores throughout our home state. We're a proud West Virginia-owned company, and our friendly staff is committed to serving our communities. From fuel to freshly brewed coffee and snacks, a stop at GoMart to cover your game day needs is always a touchdown. Plus, GoMart Rewards members earn points with each purchase to redeem for discounts on gas and free items. So stop by, start saving, and stay on the go with GoMart.
ITG Episode 6, time to take a look at those Kansas Jayhawks. We'll get into some specifics here. We're going to talk about advantage in the air, in the ground, special teams, and intangibles as we start to preview this matchup. Which team has the advantage in the air? And remember, this isn't just all who's got the better quarterback or anything like that. We're talking receivers. We're talking pass protection. We're talking verse coverage and pass rush, all these different things. Jed, where are you going on this one? I know you've broken down the film and spent all the hours already. In your mind, who's got the edge, the advantage in the air?
I'll say this. I do like Jalen Daniels at quarterback for Kansas. I think they're, just like Neil said in his press earlier this week, they're a fundamentally different football team with him behind center. He's a passer first, but he is athletic. He can extend some plays, put you in a tough spot on the back end. From a secondary standpoint, we're looking at a situation where Wesley McCormick's going to be out the first half. We're still trying to figure out what's playing out with Charles Wood's injury. So we might be a little short manned. We'll see. But I'm not so entirely certain that Kansas has enough weapons on the perimeter to make us pay for that. And I do think that I would say our pass rush, but see, here's what Kansas does so well. They get the football out quickly. I mean, they inherited a team. When Lance Leipold took over last year, he inherited a team that had an offense that gave up more sacks than any team in the FBS since 2009. They gave up more than 5 sacks a game. So they didn't have a whole lot of talent up front. He got some transfers in from Buffalo to help him out. But what they did do was schematically not put so much strain on that offensive line. And Jalen Daniels is a guy who gets the football out quickly. A matter of fact, when you look at his time to release the football a year ago, it was 2.33 seconds per Pro Football Focus. That was the fastest in the Big 12. And last week against Tennessee Tech, 2.18 seconds. They get it out quickly. So let's jump to the other side. Obviously, we've talked at length about what we liked about JT Daniels. I do like some of the things that West Virginia has going on the perimeter in that receiver room. And I think it's a different challenge this week than last week in terms of pass pro against that Kansas defense. They're obviously not as nasty at the point of attack as Pitt was, but they are creative. So you have to be careful with some of what you do. But all things considered, when I look at it globally, I have to give the edge through the air to the Mountaineers, to JT Daniels and the Mountaineers against, even though I think Kenny Logan's one of the better safeties in the league, I don't know if he has much help on the back end for Kansas defensively.
Owen, you concur?
I concur.
Check.
Edge in the air, WVU.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's hard for me to say, like, I have some notes written down here. I mean, they had a big week against Tennessee Tech, so it's slightly skewed on this year and how I look, 205 passing, 297 on the ground. I mean, obviously had a day. Like he was saying, Daniels, 189 passing yards, 29 rushing yards. He could be a little bit of a threat in the run, I think, because he can move, he can scramble. So we'll have to be a little bit aware of that, obviously. but it's hard to really get most of their touchdowns were on run plays. It's just a skewed. It's a tune-up game for them versus what we gave. This is more really who we are. So, in my opinion, I'm gonna go with us. I'm gonna go with our boys, right? The old gold and blue. Let's go, JT. Hey, bring us back to glory, brother.
That's where I'm at too, Owen. I'm going WVU here. I'm with Jed. I think Jalen Daniels is a nice quarterback for Kansas.
Yeah.
I think he's one of maybe the more underrated signal callers in Power 5, honestly. He is. But I don't think they have quite the offensive line. I know certainly that they don't have the same amount of playmakers on the outside. And while I like Jalen Daniels, I'll take JT Daniels every single time. So give me the Mountaineers through the air as well. How about edge on the ground? I'll come to you with this one first, Big O, the beer truck himself. When you factor it all in, offensive line, running backs, versus rush defense, tackling, who you riding with here?
Once again, I'm going to go with the old gold and blue here. Obviously, they had a good game. They had a good tune-up game. Devin Neal, he had 4 carries for 108. Here's what I will say: if we don't contain him, he will make our lives very miserable. In my opinion, they have speed, but I don't think obviously Tennessee Tech is the same caliber of what our D line is. I think we're gonna end up giving them some problems up front. We're gonna be the spear both sides of the ball on offense and defense on the lines. I think we're gonna just be more physical, in my opinion. I think what's bad for Kansas is we just took a bad beat.
Yeah.
And we're ready to go to Pound Town.
Well said.
That's my opinion. That's what ends up happening, man. When you take a loss like that, you're ready to go hit somebody. It is what it is. That's any football player ever. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you don't even like hitting. You want to beat somebody up. So I give our guys that. They're going to come out polished. They're going to come out refined. It's home. It's a night game. It's going to be an electric atmosphere. Don't think we're not going to pound it. I give WVU the gold on that.
I agree.
Mr. Drenning?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Devin Neal guy. Lawrence kid that decided to stay home. I mean, what's not to like about this kid? He is a playmaker for him. He's explosive. He has vision. He's exactly what they need to get them out of some tough situations and maybe pop a few. So an offense like that doesn't have to have extended drives and stay on the field for 10 or 12 plays where mistakes often happen. So big Devin Neal guy. Kai Thomas. I'll tell you what, I couldn't have been more impressed by Kai Thomas. But, of course, last year in the bowl game in the desert against Minnesota, he was running behind that Minnesota O-line. But, I mean, those dudes were the real deal. But Kai Thomas is a player. He's a Topeka kid who decided to come home. So both those Kansas kids, nice 1-2 punch. They got a transfer from Nebraska. They do have a good room. They really do. Now, up front at the point of attack, who's paving the way for them? When you look at Earl Bostick at tackle, he's a former tight end, nice feet, nimble kid. I like a piece he has there. Mike Nowitzki at center. Again, the Buffalo transfer came in with Leipold. I just don't know if they have a unit at large to withstand what West Virginia is going to try and throw at them. And this is where Lee Koba, Lance Dixon, and the speed of that West Virginia linebacking core would enter the equation. And then when you flip the other side, I can't say enough about how Zach Frazier played last week. He played an incredible football game. Neil talked about how well Doug Nestor played last week. So I think the O-line is going to have some punch. We saw it against a very nasty, very talented Pitt defense. Now, KU is going to come out hell-bent for stopping it just like Pitt was, right? And now they've seen C.J. McDonald. They understand a couple of the wrinkles. It's not going to be easy. They're not just going to lay over and play dead and let us run through them with split zone, right, or with inside zone. So we're going to have to earn it, and I think we will find a way to do so. West Virginia on the ground.
Tell you what, he's a tough act to follow, Owen. Jeez, I mean,
Dude, it's not fun.
It's not fun. I mean, it's just an encyclopedia over here.
It's just the knowledge.
I think that it's rightfully said, and All that, don't fact check him. All that was just made up. He just
That's
made up
right.
names there. Devin Neal's not even a real person, all right? But don't check that for us.
He's the guy staying 2 doors down in the Marriott here in Fredericksburg.
You're absolutely right. This is a much improved Kansas team. It really is. You know, like we making jokes about how they blew out Tennessee Tech last week, right? But like that's not something that this program has done very often. You know, a couple years ago they're losing to Nicholls State in the opener, you know, at home, and they're struggling with South Dakota and Indiana State. You know, for them to win comfortably against Tennessee Tech, I do, you know, speaks to where they're going as a program.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just don't think they're quite there yet. They have a lot of nice pieces in that running back room. They have a couple offensive linemen who can play. I just don't think they have the full gambit, the full arsenal there like WVU does with the 5 that are led by Frazier, with the running back room now that feels extra stacked after what we saw Thursday night at Acrisure Stadium. I will also go WVU.
Scott, and real quick, Scott Fuchs is their O-line coach. Again, came from Buffalo. This staff's been together since Moby Dick was a guppy. He's an old Howard Mudd guy, Owen. Remember Howard Mudd? Yeah.
The zone
there you
father.
Go. Yeah.
The grandfather of the zone.
So they forged a relationship, and he's learned a lot through the years. He's a disciple of Howard Mudd's, is Scott Fuchs. And I think he's done a tremendous job for Lance Leipold, what he inherited at Kansas. Again, remember, Leipold was hired on April 30th last year. So he didn't even get to be there for spring ball. The staff wasn't there until the summer. So I couldn't be more impressed by a couple of the small corners they turned as a program, and they were playing some good football down the stretch. When you look at those last 3 games, when they upset Texas, okay, they lost in a 1-possession game against TCU. They gave us all we can handle. I mean, that's what their last 3 games, now add this one to it. That's a pretty good 4-game sample size there that they've been playing some solid football.
Yeah, and you know, I'm calling this a tune-up game, and I'm not trying to disrespect nobody or anything, but you know, in the game of football, when you play a lesser opponent, okay, the sign of a good team is blowing that team out. Okay,
make them look like a lesser
sign of a team that doesn't really know who they are yet is keeping it close. So I will say from that, they obviously are headed in the right direction.
And finally, edge and special teams, edge and intangibles. I'm going first on this one, fellas. And I'm pushing the third and final chip to the old gold and blue side once again. From what we saw from Ollie Straw, what we saw from Parker Grotehouse, what we saw from Casey Legg, what we saw from CJ blocking a punt as well, too. I'm going Mountaineers here with the edge and special teams and intangibles.
Owen?
Yeah, enough said, honestly. We've talked about that on the recap as well. I think I'm going WVU.
Now, when I look at not just special teams, but when I include the intangibles, I don't like the penalties. Now, Kansas had some penalties too last week, but it was more in the late going when they had subs in, and they got kind of sloppy. Ours were more critical. We got to clean a lot of things up in the penalty department. But at the end of the day, when you look at special teams, how can you argue against how we performed from a special team standpoint last week? And here's the other thing about it. Who populates your special teams units? This is where a program's depth or lack of depth really comes to the forefront, okay? So when you consider who we have populating our coverage units or our kick units and transition units, and consider that against what Kansas has, when you lack depth, that's where you're going to take a hit, right? And I do think that we have some young depth in some key spots. CJ Donaldson comes to mind. Some of these young guys make us better because we're longer, we're more athletic in the transition units. Guys who might not be getting the battle-tested 50 snaps a game on offense or defense, they're populating those units, and that's not entirely the same with Kansas. They're working towards that, but that only comes through 2, 3, 4 recruiting cycles. So edge West Virginia.
We'll bring up the graphic here as we bring this portion of the preview to a close, and you'll see we've all got WVU edge in the air, edge on the ground, edge in special teams, and intangibles as well too. So there it is. Well, if you look at the graphic there, you'll see where we've got the Mountaineers with the advantage in all three categories. We're going to take our last break here. When we come back, we will continue to deep dive into this matchup. We'll look at the tail of the tape. We'll talk a little bit about that game last year when they last played in Lawrence. If there's anything we can take from that, anything Jed remembers specifically there, and we'll show some more score projections before we get out of here as well too. One more segment to go. You are in the gun.
I'm talking with J.R. Toothman of Toothman Ford. J.R., everybody knows a lot of pro athletes buy from you. What's the secret?
Just like Will Greer, future Hall of Famer Frank Gore, James Washington, and many more pros, these guys have financial advisors that are always looking out for them to save time and money, and that's why they always shop at Toothman Ford.
And what if you're like us regular folks that don't have people giving us advice?
You don't need a financial advisor. Toothman Ford will save you time and money no matter who you are. Plus, we'll buy your car even if you don't buy from us. Visit toothmanford.com and get a quick, instant cash offer.
That sounds like a score to me.
That's right. And as always, we'll take anything in trade from chicken wings to Super Bowl rings.
Toothman Ford's got a lot of fans. Here's another one, Dallas Cowboys QB Will Greer.
This is Will Greer, former West Virginia and current NFL quarterback. And cars really do cost less in Grafton at Toothman Ford.
That's a fact, Will. Thanks. You can shop online anytime at toothmanford.com.
ITG Episode 6, getting you ready for the Mountaineers against the Jayhawks, 6 o'clock Saturday night in Morgantown. Wes Uhler, Jed Drenning, Owen Schmitt with you here as we give some final thoughts, take a look at some tail of the tape. But first, before we go to the tape here, Mr. Drenning, when these teams last met last year in Lawrence, 34-28 Wvu win. A little close for comfort, but as you mentioned, it was a Kansas team that was playing their best football, and WVU also, I mean, down the stretch 4-2 in the last 6 games last year. What do you remember about that win in Lawrence? Anything that you think translates or carries to this year in Morgantown?
A couple things. First, it was a night game. Second, we were fighting for bowl eligibility, so we needed that win to become bowl eligible. And because of what had happened in the previous 2 weeks, there was a little bit of juice surrounding Kent. You heard Big Daddy talking about the student section. That's true, because the student section in Lawrence is right behind our bench. They were a pretty cool student section. Sometimes it's not as energized. Obviously, most of the time it's not as energized. I've always joked that in past years, if I ever had family heirlooms that I wanted to protect, I'd get a lockbox and put them up in the 15th row behind the corner of the end zone in Booth Memorial Stadium in Kansas. But that night, there was a little bit of energy in the building. And I think in part because they had upset Texas. They had nearly upset TCU. Jalen Daniels was playing some good football. But the hero out there was the Casey kid, right, who had the Applebee's deal. He got the game-winning 2-point conversion against Texas. Yep. And he had a big catch down the seam against us. And what I remember is there was a strange energy to that building that we couldn't seem to separate. I remember we were up by 8 at the half. We came out early in the second half. They had a pick 6 to tie it. And that student section started going crazy. Now, fortunately, we were able to start leaning on them. And in the second half, we just broke them defensively. And both Tony and Letty went over the century mark. We had, let me see here, total rushing yards 261, but they both played really well. The O-line played well. I remember the wideouts blocking downfield very effectively. Jalen Daniels, I remember watching him that night. He can be scary. And one of the numbers that stuck out to me going into that game was heading into that matchup with him under center. In 10 red zone drives, they'd score 10 red zone touchdowns. And he has that skill set to make them kind of tricky. But when we look at the result from last year, that was the mark of a Kansas football team that was playing pretty good football down the stretch. And as we touched on in the last segment, it seems like they've continued that by doing what you're supposed to do against an FCS team that's struggling in Tennessee Tech last week, 56-10.
We'll see if that continues for Kansas. Obviously, yeah, you look at the last stretch of games here. They have played much better football, certainly relative to their traditional expectations.
The only other thing I remember, Wes, we were down to one backer, Owen. We played most of that game with one backer. We had Scotty Young, who was our spear, playing Will in that game.
Jeez.
So, I mean, Jordan Leslie had to get really creative from a linebacker standpoint. But anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
Let's hope the Kansas football resurgence takes pause on Saturday, and then they can pick back up next week. Time to get to some tail of the tape here, which is, as always, brought to you by our friends at High Street Prints. We'll have some gear for you here soon. Make sure you're checking them out for all your needs at highstreetprints.com. Owen, we'll start with the Wvu offense versus the Kansas defense. And now, this is always, when you're looking at the numbers, grain of salt after 1 week, right? Because there's not a huge sample size, particularly against the competition that Kansas played. But WVO versus the Kansas D, anything stand out to you here?
I'm going to say the biggest thing that I see, total yards against a tough, stingy defense like Pitt. For us, I thought we did a great job there. The biggest things that I'm going to be looking for are third down percentages, right? We were 50-50. Now, that's not great, but at the same time, in my opinion, that's a start, right?
Yeah.
That's against a pretty tough team. I don't have all the breakdown of the third and shorts versus third and longs, but 50-50 is well on your way to getting where you want to be, right? You want to be, in my opinion, somewhere around the 75% range to be very good at it. Correct, Jed? I mean,
well, here's the way this works. If you go 50% for a game, that's great. If you go 50% for a season, that's exceptional.
Yeah.
Holding that, sustaining that over the long arc of time. And because this time of year, it's all skewed because the rest of the league is playing the Big 12s of the world, or excuse me, the Tennessee Techs of the world. The rest of the Big 12 is. So they might have some 60 or 70% performances, but that will come back down to reality as they play real teams. We did play a real team. And when you get 50% against the likes of Pitt, that is exceptional. Now, can you maintain that?
Yeah.
You keep it. If you get around the 50% mark, if we're having the same conversation in week 8, that's incredibly good news. Incredibly good news. So you'll have games where you might hit 65, 70%, sure.
Yeah.
But that's the way that's going to work.
Yeah. Obviously there's a lot of numbers talk, especially once we get into when I got in the NFL, it was all about numbers, right? Third down percentages. It's a mathematical equation that these coaches are completely dialed into. 65%, I know, was a lot of the talk that we were always shooting for. That was our goals during the games. But like you were saying, most teams settle down into those 50-40% ranges. So the big thing, like you just added, that's what we're shooting for, right? I'm happy with that. For the third down percentages, but yeah, there's going to be games where we're going to be higher, and there's going to be games where we're lower. It'd be nice to stick that out for the rest of the year. Turnovers, okay, that's my next big thing. All right, we got to eliminate the turnovers.
Yeah,
we had to, but and I can't even give you the numbers. I wish I had them off the top of my head, but I know once you lose one turnover, your chances of winning are like 75%. You lose 2, it's like 50. You lose 3. You might as well take the cleats off and head home. You lose 4 or 5, you might as well not even play the game. So turnovers are a big deal, obviously. And then, the health of our quarterback, right? Total sacks allowed. We had 3 last week. Would like to eliminate that number. Now, 3 isn't in the grand scheme of things against a defense like we just faced. That's understandable. But still, we want to keep our quarterback healthy and hope that we take that pride, right? That O-line takes that pride in keeping him healthy and getting those balls out. And I know Jed's got his little quirks with the 5-yard delay of penalty calls or the false starts. Sorry. So I know those didn't equate into this, but for the sake of our quarterback JT, for the sake of our season, we want to keep him healthy, and that'd be another number I'd really look for going forward.
Lonnie Phelps is a name to remember. He's their edge rusher. He's the real deal. We're going to need a plan for him, and I'm sure the tight ends will be involved in helping out with him. He's the guy that had 3 sacks last week against Tennessee Tech. He transferred from Miami. Amazingly enough, he won all MAC honors, only starting 1 game last year with 9.5 sacks. Kind of a strange situation. He was in at Miami, but he's the real deal defensively. They've got some veteran linebackers. A couple seniors, a couple transfers. They got another junior in. They played a lot of football in that linebacker group. So they're long in the tooth. But to your point, Wes, I want to double back to this real quick. You talked about how they've struggled traditionally against these types of teams, the Tennessee Techs of the world. Here's what's happened. Last year, they came from behind to beat South Dakota 17-14 in the opener. Of course, they lost 3 straight to Coastal Carolina. That's a forgivable sin based on Kansas being where Kansas is, right? Indiana State, they beat them 24-17 in 2019. 2018, they lost to Nicholls State 26-23. 2015, lost to South Dakota 41-38. Southeast Missouri, year before that, 34-28. Traditionally, or at least traditionally, since they started this 10, 12-year swoon, the struggle they've been in, they struggle with these types of teams. So I'm a firm believer that you can tell something about every football game played, no matter who it's against, okay? And if you go out and take care of business in the nature that they did, Devin Neal, 4 carries over the century mark. Jalen Daniels, good work, 15 of 18. They played a lot of kids, got a lot of bodies moving in, moving out. Dispatched of those guys the way a decent football team dispatch of them. And in the past, they haven't done that. To me, that's a sign, one more sign, that Lance Leipold is starting to turn a bit of a corner with this program.
No, absolutely. There's no denying. Look at the other side of this, Jed. WVU defense versus the Kansas offense. What stands out to you, partner?
Well, again, when you look at what Kansas does, they've got playmakers, okay? Now, the question is, how many playmakers? We've talked about the running back room. They always have a guy or two on the perimeter that can make plays for them. It's just a function of depth. And one of the things they're very good at, when you watch what they do schematically, one of the things they've always been very good at, their offensive coordinator, Andy Kotelnicki, he uses a lot of movement, a lot of shifts. He'll test your eye discipline defensively. We talked about it last week, having your eye discipline going into the Pitt game tested from a play action standpoint. This is a different animal. They'll run a lot of formation to the boundary, okay? So what they're doing is they recognize that they have some areas or some personnel that they can attack you with, but they'll keep shifting and keep moving. 2/3 of the time, they'll have some kind of motion or shift from a formation. And what they're trying to do is get you off balance defensively to put their playmaker in position to flourish. I mean, one of the reasons they'll go so much FSL, formation to the sidelines or formation to the boundary, is defensively that kind of puts you in a pickle. You've got to decide defensively. You're doing one of two things. When an offense runs formation to the boundary, Owen can tell you the same thing. You either have to play the numbers and play the strength of the formation, which is to the short side, or you got to play to defend the grass. You can't do both. You've got to do one or the other. So what they'll do is FSL, see how you defend it, and then they'll counter with how you defend it. So they're very good at using a lot of motion. But the numbers can be somewhat deceiving this time of year just because we haven't had one game in. They played Tennessee Tech. How much are we going to read into that? But from a production standpoint, the West Virginia defense has to get better against the pass. Now, we faced a talented team last week. Their angles on the back end have to be better. How many times in the first couple episodes this year did we talk about how resilient this defense is, this Jordan Leslie defense? They swell up when they get in the red zone. That becomes about pad level and leverage, right? Well, traditionally, they've done very well. Not so much last week. They struggled in the red zone against Pitt. Pitt's reached the end zone each time it got into the red zone. So these are areas that you need to improve on. Kansas offensively had their way on third down. We got to get them off the field. Once again, if we get them off the field when they have the ball and we keep moving the chains when we have the ball, we want to get to a point in the second half where we're tapping into that lack of depth because their starters, they have some pretty talented starters in a lot of key spots. But when you have your advantage against the Kansas Jayhawks is when you can force them to tap into their 2s and 3s, right? And that's only going to happen by, running that snap count up, winning those third downs, getting them off the field when they face a third down. So those are the types of numbers on here that I'm looking at with West Virginia's defense versus Kansas's offense.
I love it. Got to lean on them and wear them down, Big O. That's the directive this week from the signal caller. So let's see here then what Vegas thinks. We think. Time for our final projection here, fellas. And here we go. We'll pull up the graphic right now. 35-23,
yep.
A Mountaineer victory. I'd maybe like 35-17 or 35-20, but I'll take it.
I'll tell you what. Texas last year would have signed up for a 35-23 guys, right? I promise you Sarkisian would have signed up for it. But no, we just have to accept the fact that Kansas, while they might finish last in the league, who knows how this season turns out for them. But I do think we will regard them as one of the more improved football teams, not just in the league, but in college football at large. They're on their way, but they dug themselves such a hole. It does take time. They're a different kind of doormat than what they even were 18 months ago. I mean, they're doing the right things with Lance Leipold. There's a reason he got extended. He's the right guy for that job in Lawrence. And that job is, I can tell you, as somebody who's been out there every other year since 2012, that is a supreme challenge to get that thing. I remember they had like a high school track going around the stadium when we first went out there, and the first couple of trips out there in 13 and 15. But he is doing as good a job as you can expect. They're going to be a better football team. They're not going to give you the cheap stuff like the Kansas teams in the past might have. So we have to accept the fact that, look, this isn't the 56-10 Kansas that we used to know and love, right? You're not going to march in and have Geno go 23-24 against these guys, right? That's not who this Kansas team is under Lance Leipold. They have fight in them, and they're going to battle you every snap. It's just they might be a little shorthanded, and that's why if you show up ticked off as we are and execute and take care of business, this really shouldn't be in question in the second half. But you have to do that because they are going to fight, and they're better than they have been in recent years.
Yeah. How well are we going to respond, honestly? And I did mention Devin Neal there. He will give us trouble. I'm just saying, if we do not contain that guy, he'll hit us where it hurts because he's an absolute burner. I think that's my biggest thing for this game, is just making sure that we contain that guy.
With a secondary that struggled with pursuit angles last week, right, Owen?
Yep.
So if he busts into the second level, it gets scary.
Yeah, with us being banged up a little bit too. I mean, but we'll see what happens. You know what I mean? We're gonna respond. We will respond. That every Mountaineer team, in my opinion, coached under whoever, we don't like losing, right? So we will respond. We will have a good week of practice. I know we will. I know the coaches will have us focused up and prepare for a physical game.
A little get-right game for the boys on Saturday night. That'll do it for this episode of ITG. Thanks to our friends who make this happen, Toothman Ford, Go Mart, High Street Prints. Gentlemen, that'll be it for this week, and we will reconvene early next week for a recap of everything that happens on Saturday night. Rock and roll. Can't wait. For Jed Drenning, for Owen Schmitt, I'm Wesley Uhler. A reminder, be an ear, tell an ear, all right, as we spread the good word about this In the Gun football podcast, this WVU and Big 12 football podcast, and make sure you're getting involved with us. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, if you want to see our beautiful mugs here and Owen's lovely couch that looks like it's out of an 18th century French painting, all right, at In the Gun Podcast is where you get involved with us on all your platforms. The Signal Caller, the Beer Truck, I'm Wesley Uhler. Thanks for listening as always, everybody. You've been In the Gun.